What's up, everybody? Dr. Jeff, Rythmia Life Advancement Center, Chief Medical Officer, Doctorate in Psychology, Master's in Public Health. Worked at UCLA many years, ran rehabs, private practice in Los Angeles, working with all kinds of people. Rewire your brain. How does that work? Well, bottom line is this. If you have an addiction, if you are or addicted to a certain behavioral vibe, such as anxiety, or if you are used to feeling depressed or overwhelmed, or you have attachment disorder, or you have a so-called personality disorder, what happens is your brain is used to responding to your emotional process in a certain way. And then it creates certain feelings that you have and certain behaviors that you lock into and click into and become familiar with. So how do we shift out of that if it's not serving you? And a lot of people, it's not serving them to be in this sort of locked in state that tells them that they're not worth loving, they're not worthy of being happy, their trauma history is affecting their life. There's people that are not healed, that lash out at other people and blame others for their own problems. And there's a lot of stuff going on that are happening with individuals, and all of us have gone through it to some degree. So how do we rewire our brain? Well, what happens is this. Let's talk about addiction, because that's an easy way to understand this. But this can be used for anything. It can be used for anxiety. It can be used for depression. It can be used for just like negative thinking. It can be used for a lot of things. So I like to use addiction because there's been some studies done on this, and it's really helpful for us to understand. So what happens with somebody that uses drugs or alcohol in an addictive way is that it creates a pleasure surge, a pleasure principle that's reinforcing. And it tells our brain that we need this substance for survival. It's something that like entices us to be happy and excited towards something that we need. That's like the addictive side of drugs and alcohol. And then what happens is people try to stop using, right? They go through a rehab, or they go through a detox, or they try to just like stop cold turkey, depending on what the drug or alcohol substance is. And then they feel like really upset and out of sorts because their survival instinct has been trumped by this instinctive biological drive. So what happens with plant medicine is it overrides all of this stuff, right? It overrides the instinctive nature of this pleasure principle that's based on things that are not suiting you and not helping and serving you. And it's something that's like, a big part of like when I was working with people in addiction in Los Angeles, and also with all kinds of conditions, borderline personality disorder, lots of anxiety disorders, panic attacks, depression, all different levels of depression, suicidal stuff, like all kinds of stuff. What I was working with people is like, when you're in that moment and you're feeling overwhelmed, what do you do? Like, what is it that you actually do? And what happens for a lot of people is they get a bit overwhelmed with their own neurochemistry, their own history of drug and alcohol abuse, and the emotions come flooding in, or they become escalated in a manic phase that hinders their ability to make the right decision. So what I love about plant medicine is that it goes in to your brain, it rewires the neurochemistry that your brain has set up for the pleasure principle associated with these substances or with these behaviors that are not serving you. And it goes in and it resets everything, and it builds new neuron pathways that help lead you down a different path. And that is called synaptic plasticity. Synaptic plasticity is something that is a neurochemical concept, which means the brain can adjust and reform based on like what you're going through. Very cool. It's a super cool concept. We used to think the brain was rigid. 20 years ago, neuroscientists believed the brain was rigid and you couldn't move past a certain sort of developmental stage. And that was it. It's not what's happening. The brain is always evolving. And, they tell elderly people, it's funny, right? Like I told my grandma, I said, hey, grandma, do crossword puzzles all the time. Watch Jeopardy, not Wheel of Fortune. Watch Jeopardy, because that's getting your brain to think. And the more you think, the more you do crossword puzzles, the more the brain adjusts and develops and has synaptic plasticity, and the less likely you are to develop Alzheimer's and dementia. Okay, so how do we stay in a position where we can sort of rewire our brain? Well, this is how we do it. We are open-minded. We can engage in plant medicine if that's where we're at, or we can engage in meditation and exercise and mindful activities. I tell people all the time, there's a big difference between exercising just to exercise and exercising in a mindful way. Mindfully, you're letting go of certain things you're holding on to. This anxiety, this tension, this family drama, this pain, this whatever, whatever, right? There's a way to let it go mindfully. There's a way to exercise. It's just about exercising. My son, who's 17, he's exercising just to exercise for basketball and for football. He's just lifting weights, trying to get strong. That's not how I exercise. Okay, I exercise mindfully. I'm getting off this anxiety. I'm getting off of me this stress. I'm getting off of me this depression. I'm getting off of me all this stuff that I'm holding on to, right? So that's how we rewire our brain. Plant medicine allows this to happen. It facilitates it. It's what allows it to happen. Now, sometimes people relapse on drugs and alcohol that were sober for a little bit. And that's okay. That's part of the process for some people. And if you guys know anybody that had, a history of drug and alcohol abuse, like hardcore stuff, crystal methamphetamine, heroin, they were involved in all kinds of sketchy behavior. And then they got some clean time and some sober time, and were doing really good, right? They had a couple years, 3 years maybe. And then they relapsed, right? What is that like? Well, what it's like for those people is really, really hard. It's more hard, in a sense, than people that are always on the cycle of just using, because the reason is because they had some clarity. And their brain, during those 3 years of sobriety, adjusted to a healthier behavior. And so what happens is, the people that relapse after several years of using, or several years of sobrieties, what happens to those people is they go really dark, right? And so it's up to us to help support these people and provide an environment of safety. And that's what we're trying to do at Rythmia. We're trying to get people to rise up out of all the difficult things they're having. If you got 3 years of sobriety, as an example, I'm just talking about randomly, person X, you've done a lot of sketchy behavior for your whole life. You got 3 years of sobriety. You're working in the healing field. Now you relapse. You're back with your same old people you were before, your same boyfriend you were before, all this kind of crazy stuff. It's okay. We get it. That's your process, right? But there's ways to come out of that, and it's not the focus of treatment and of somebody to rebuild their neuroplasticity, to go back into the old ways and dive back into this ridiculous sort of pleasure principle sort of surge that occurs with serotonin and dopamine and norepinephrine. So what we're trying to do at Rythmia is help people get some clarity, rewire their brain. I did an interview with Chris Collins, who is the director and founder of NoHo Recovery, which is in North Hollywood. And it's on Instagram, it's on Facebook, it's on our webpage. You guys should check it out. It's we talk about how the brain works and how you can rewire your brain to get back on track with all the stuff you guys are trying to do. Depression, anxiety, drug and alcohol addiction, all kinds of stuff, right? Any definition for a medical director specifies that this is for an MD degree. You don't have one. How do you know what you are doing regarding the entire medical picture for a participant Rythmia? Okay, Ken. What's up, Ken? Okay, so Ken, check it out. Okay, so Ken, I'm going to talk to you right now, dude. Okay, this is a question that comes up periodically. I have a master's in public health from UCLA. I have a doctorate in psychology from Los Angeles, a school called California School of Professional Psychology. I used to run a bunch of clinics at UCLA in OBGYN department in Westwood. I also got into medical school. There's no legal or sort of administrative requirement that the medical director or chief medical officer of any facility needs to have an MD. Now, most of them do, actually. Most of them do. But my background, because I have 29 years working in healthcare and mental health and inpatient psychiatric hospitals, private practice, and working with all kinds of different stuff, right? What that allows me to do is have a background in policy. And my master's in public health was in health policy development and program management. And I'm the guy that wrote the license with the government of Costa Rica to allow Rythmia to have plant medicine as a medical treatment for people that go through all kinds of mental health struggles. So a chief medical officer, most of the time, I'd say, a lot of the time, is a medical doctor. Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. But it's not a necessity. It's not something that's like needed. It's not something that's like required. It's not a legal issue. And one of my really good friends, his name is Michael Stewart. He's an MD, and he's like in charge of all kinds of different things in the United States. He's a chief medical officer of a lot of places. He tells me all the time, too. Just as a side note, Jeff, you don't need to have an MD to be a chief medical officer. You need to have the background in policy, the background in healthcare, the background in what you're trying to accomplish with the government and the legal issues and all the kind of stuff you're dealing with at Rythmia in Costa Rica. So, Ken, any definition for a medical director specifies the necessity for an MD degree? Yes. A lot of places that have that as a requirement. I'm aware. Like a lot of places require that. It's okay. Like totally. My background's pretty unique. And it's really hard to find a medical MD person that's going to be able to know what I am doing, which is building up plant medicine, doing policy development, working with the government of Costa Rica, dealing with patients that have anxiety, depression, all kinds of stuff. So Ken, like, good question, dude. Like, right on, bro. Thank you for asking that, because I think it's a lot of people wonder about that. A lot of people wonder about that, and I think that's a really good question. I appreciate you asking that, dude, because I'm happy to talk about it. And what happens with a lot of medical directors and chief medical officers at places is they get pigeonholed into certain disciplines based on their license. And I don't have that problem. I can talk about plant medicine. I can talk about Costa Rica. I can talk about the United States. I can talk about all kinds of stuff. And it allows me a freedom that is what's needed right now at this particular place. Now, what's going to happen eventually is there's going to be an evolving, right? There's going to be an evolvement sort of nature of what we're doing. And Ken says he's familiar with the government of Costa Rica. Good. Okay, perfect. Well, Ken, if you're familiar with the government of Costa Rica, you will be familiar with it. My name is on the license of Rythmia. My name, Jeff McNairy, not anybody else's. My name's on the license. Okay, so they've allowed me to be the chief medical officer. Okay, they've allowed it. All right, so I take that position very seriously, and I know that it's something that like is not to be minimized and take. I don't try to go outside my scope. That's why I have a medical director. Dr. Arturo, and he is a medical director in Costa Rica. He's an MD, and he's the guy that deals with all the medical things legally, right? So thanks, Ken. Thanks, Ken, for like talking about this and bringing it up, because I really appreciate this conversation. It's a good thing, dude. And what we're doing in Rythmia in Costa Rica is we're trying to change and shift the way healthcare goes for certain people. Some people still need the Western model. Some people still need the traditional meds or therapy or whatever it is that goes on in the Western model that I'm very familiar with for 20 plus years. And some people need something really different, which is ayahuasca, other plant-based medicines, right? Arturo earned his MD degree in Costa Rica, and he's at one of the main universities in Costa Rica. Okay? So Ken, why don't you email me, Ken? Email me privately. I'll look up your stuff on Facebook, and we can have a conversation where you and I can kind of get some clarity and talk about stuff. And if needed, we can have another Facebook Live where I talk about this, dude. So I think this is really, really healthy. I like it, dude. I like it, man. I like conversation. I like debate. That's really cool. I like your questions, your conversation. I really appreciate it. So rewiring your brain is very important if you're going to change your anxiety behavior, your addiction behavior, your depression behavior, your suicidal history behavior, all kinds of stuff, right? That's why we want to rewire the brain. That's what's up. No, thank you. Okay, Ken says no, thank you. He doesn't want to talk about it more. Okay, right on, Ken. All right, dude. Ken doesn't want to talk about it more. All good, dude. You're just like everybody else out there that wants to critique what we're doing and just doesn't have any fucking balls to really say what's up. All right, dude. Thanks a lot. Pura vida. Peace out. All right.